Hey, this is Mike Robbins. Thanks so much for joining me for this episode of the podcast. Hope you're doing well, you, your family, your team, everyone around you. As I'm recording this, we roll through February. Hope life is good whenever you're listening to or watching this episode. I want to talk a bit about how we can stay grounded, stay hopeful, stay positive authentically in the midst of uncertainty or change or difficulty. And look, whenever you may be listening to this or watching this, we're in a moment right now where there's quite a bit of uncertainty and change happening in our country, in our world. You know, we've got a new president, we started a new year. There's lots of different things going on in the country and in the world. Lot of things that seem up in the air and in some cases challenging, in other cases hopeful. But it feels to me as I'm talking to leaders and teams and people from all different backgrounds and in different industries around the country and around the world, there is a sense right now of kind of trepidation, maybe more significantly, maybe less significantly, depending on, where you find yourself in the country or the world, what industry you're in, your, political beliefs or background or perspective on a lot of things. But it's just an interesting time. And, we're coming up on the fifth anniversary of when the pandemic really took over life here, at least here in the US. By, this time 5 years ago, it was impacting significantly what was going on in Asia and Europe. But in America, it didn't really get to us until March of 2020. And I've just been thinking about and reflecting on as I just celebrated a birthday last week, like, wow, I've been through a lot. We've all been through a lot over the last 5 years. So many ups, so many downs, so many twists, so many turns. And like these last 5 years sometimes seem like 5 decades in a way. And in another way, it seems like it's all happened really fast. But, whatever may be going on in your life right now, whatever may be going on in your business, with your team, with the people around you, you're probably dealing with some level of stress or challenge, some level of uncertainty. I mean, just even the way that artificial intelligence is already impacting life and business, and everything we're seeing and hearing and reading is that it's going to change the way we do everything. Although that hasn't quite happened yet, it's kind of like, well, what does that mean? Or how's that going to impact me or my business or my industry or what I do or what the people around me do? What's it going to be like for our children? If you have children at whatever age or stage, we've got two daughters. The oldest is in her first year in college, and our youngest is a sophomore in high school. Um, so there's a lot happening and a lot that kind of seems like we're waiting to see what happens. There's quite a bit of uncertainty. So, what can we do when we're facing times of uncertainty, times of change, even times of challenge or difficulty? I want to share 5 specific things that you can do individually and that you can also impart on your team. Now, these are things that I've touched on in different times on different episodes in the past. And if you followed me in my work, you may have heard me talk about them, but I want to talk about them in this context for right now, given what's going on. And again, as you relate to this in terms of your own life, your own work, your own business, your own team, see how they fit for you. The first thing that we can do when things get challenging or when things are uncertain or when it feels like, we don't necessarily know or even like the direction things are going is to look for the growth opportunities. There's always growth opportunities. Sometimes they're really obvious and they smack us in the face. Other times we have to look a little bit harder. And you've heard me talk about this phenomenon before, but asking the question, why is this happening for me instead of to me, is a great way to shift us into that growth mindset, to shift us into that perspective of looking for the opportunity for growth. If you're not liking the way things are going right now around you, in your business, in your industry, in the country, in the world. Again, there are certain things that we can do potentially to influence those things. But at the end of the day, a lot of stuff happens that really we don't control. We're at the effect of to some degree. And I don't say that from a sort of victim mindset at all, but it's like, what can we do? Like, I find myself and other people complaining about a lot of things that are out of our control. There's really only 2 things we can control in life: our attitude and our effort. Our attitude is our mindset, our approach, how we look at things. Our effort is what we do, the actions that we take. And one of the best ways to shift our mindset is to look for, what can I learn from this? How can this teach me? How can this potentially make me better, stronger, more resilient? even if it's just learning how to relax in the face of difficulty or in the face of uncertainty, right? I find myself when things aren't going the way that I want them to, trying to remind myself, hey, this is an opportunity to practice some of the things that I teach, some of the things I know to be important, to really put them to the test. So looking for growth opportunities is the first thing that we can do when we're facing uncertainty or change or difficulty or challenge. The second thing that's important for us to do is to remember the great saying, this too shall pass. Things are in a constant state of flux and change. Sometimes when things are scary or uncomfortable or things aren't going the way we want them to, we can get stuck in this thought process of like, it's always going to be like this or it's only going to get worse. And while that makes sense and is understandable, it's kind of like when you get sick. You know, when you get like a cold or a really bad flu, even though you know better and you know you'll get better, if you get really sick, sometimes in the middle of being sick, it's like, what if I never get better? What if I just keep getting worse? You know, and again, if we're all still fortunate enough to be alive, which you are if you're watching or listening to this, like you've made it through those illnesses or those times of difficulty. So remembering that this too shall pass. It's not forever. And related to that, the third thing is to tap into your resilience. Remind yourself of the things that you've been through, right? Another great saying that I've used before, but is my friend Theo likes to say this all the time is we've made it through 100% of the things we've ever gone through in our lives. We have more than this requires. You and I have all made it through everything that's come our way up to this point. Now, the stuff that we're dealing with currently is potentially the most vulnerable aspects. Even if we've been through things that are harder or more uncertain, the stuff that we're dealing with now, we don't know how this story ends. We don't know the outcome of this one, right? We know the outcome of every challenge up to this point. And even if we look back and go, I made it through all these challenges before, there is a practical reality of like, we can't guarantee 100% for sure that we're going to make it through this one. But if we use our past experience in a positive way, we can remind ourselves, oh yeah, I'm actually quite resilient. You know, an exercise that I often have invited my coaching clients to do over the years, and I've done it myself, especially when things get really hard or challenging, is to make a list of some of the biggest difficulties that you've overcome in your life. Again, not to re-traumatize yourself or stress yourself out or wallow on things or feel sorry for yourself. And again, I don't say that in any way to minimize or diminish the pain or the grief or the challenge of some of the stuff that we've all been through. But if you write some of that stuff down or even share it out loud with someone else, again, not from a woe is me perspective, but just like, I dealt with that. I dealt with that. I made it through that. I figured that out. I overcame that. I accomplished that. What you do in that process is remind yourself, oh, yeah, I'm quite strong. I'm quite resilient. I don't always give myself credit for how resilient I am. And when we're facing difficulty, we're facing change or challenge or uncertainty, we're not sure exactly what to do, what to say, how it's going to turn out, which is often the case at pivotal moments in our lives. Remembering what we've been through is a reminder of how resilient we are. So that's the third thing. A fourth thing we can do is to ask for support, to get the support that we deserve. Look, most of us love helping other humans. Many of us have a very difficult time asking for support from other humans. And it makes sense. Again, you've heard me talk about this before, probably, right? If you've listened to the show before or you've seen me speak, I often talk about this. I just was speaking to a group virtually this morning, and I shared this because it's often such a simple but practical reminder to ask for help. But why don't we ask for help? What makes it difficult? Well, first of all, we're afraid that we'll get judged. What, you can't do it yourself? What are you weak? You don't know how to do it. So we're afraid of the judgment that can sometimes come by asking for help. The second thing we're afraid of is that we'll get rejected, right? We could ask for help and someone could say no. That happens, and that doesn't usually, right, feel good if we ask for something and it's rejected. Being judged and rejected are two of my least favorite experiences as a human being. I try to avoid those at all costs. So most of the time, the thought of asking for help feels vulnerable because we could get judged, we could get rejected. Another thing that can happen sometimes is people can say yes when they really mean no, and then they're resentful, especially if we're in positions of leadership or authority. We ask for help, people show up to help. They don't really want to. They feel obligated to. This can happen in our families too, and then we don't find out until later that they actually didn't really want to help, and now they're annoyed with us or they feel resentful. We also don't want to burden people, right? People are burdened, especially these days. They're tired, they're exhausted. It's like, hey, I know you're carrying 10 bags. Could you carry an 11th? So it can seem rude, it can seem insensitive. There's a bunch of reasons that we don't ask for help. all of which makes sense, right? And many of us like to be self-sufficient. We don't want to feel like we're a burden. We don't want to feel indebted to other people. There's a lot of reasons. Again, good reasons that we don't. But in the process of not asking for help, we end up taking on extra burdens. We end up carrying more than we need to, and we don't get the support that we really need and ultimately deserve. And when we're dealing with stress, we're dealing with challenge, we're dealing with change, we're dealing with uncertainty, we're dealing with any level of difficulty, we often need quite a bit of support. Not because we're weak, not because there's something wrong with us, but because we're human. We're vulnerable human beings. And in those moments when things are most uncertain or unstable, or there's a lot of change going on, it's really important to ask for support and get the support that we deserve. And a few things happen when we start asking for help and support. Number one, you'll actually get some help. You'll get more help. The answer is always no if you don't ask. So asking will actually let the people around you know that you need support. Like Michelle, my wife, and I have been together for almost 25 years. I will often say to her, use your words, babe, I don't know what you need unless you tell me, and vice versa. Like I know her really well and I can anticipate a lot of things. She knows me really well, but I can't read her mind. I don't know when she needs support. The people we work with, even if we're really close with them, especially these days, given that we're often working virtually or remotely, we're not with each other in the same physical space as often as we used to be. People cannot tell and do not know what's going on. We pop up on a Zoom screen with a nice background and we act like, I'm good, I'm fine, how are you? And in reality, there's a whole lot of stuff going on down below the waterline of our iceberg, so to speak. So when we ask for help, we let people know we need it, but we actually will get some help and support. Not from every single person we ask, and not exactly in the way we necessarily want it or ask for it. People are human, they're not robots, right? But it allows for us to get some support. The second thing is we model it for the people around us. Again, especially if you're in a position of leadership or authority, or you have some competency. When people see you asking for help, they go, oh, he asked for help, she asked for help, I guess we can ask for help, I guess that's okay. It makes it more socially acceptable. It makes it more conducive in the environment. It creates more of a culture of generosity. Third thing, most importantly with asking for help, is when we ask another human being for help or other people for help, not only do we potentially get some help because they know we need it, not only do we model it and make it more conducive in the environment, it's actually a generous act. Yes, we're going to get something, some help, some support, which we want, which we ultimately deserve. But sometimes we can feel selfish about it. It's not really selfish if we do it respectfully, because when you ask another human being for support and, give them space, they can say yes or no. But if they say yes and they actually help, not only do you get some help, but you just gave the other person the opportunity to do something that most people love to do, which is what? Help. So asking for support is huge, especially when we're dealing with stress or change or challenge or difficulty. We need it. And the people around us can provide it. Great teams leverage each other's strengths. Strong relationships lean on one another when it's needed. Now, sometimes if we're all going through a change or a challenge together, it can be tricky, right? Like think of when we were all going through the pandemic, or something's happening collectively to the family, to the team, to the company, to where we live, to what's happening, right? That can be tricky because everyone's sort of at the effect of it. But at the same time, it's that whole notion of like, we're all in this together, as I talk about here on this show called We're All in This Together, but we're actually in the same storm, but we're in different boats. So paying attention to what's going on in our own boat and to the boats of the people around us. And that's the fifth thing that I want to really underscore here that we can do is look for opportunities to support others, even and especially if you need some support yourself. Now, look, I mean, if your boat is completely taken on water and you're drowning, yeah, maybe you're not in a position to really help anyone else. But most of the time, unless we're literally swimming for our lives, if we've been knocked out of the boat and can't even, barely breathe, we do have the capacity to help other human beings, to support other humans, to look for opportunities. Where can I be of service? Where can I offer some kindness, some listening, some empathy, some compassion, some practical advice if it's help needed, some actual hands-on work, whatever the case may be? Because when we do that, we get out of our own way. We get out of our own head, right? Now, again, it's important to take care of ourselves. It's important to be mindful of what's going on. Sometimes we can overdo it and we're running around trying to save the world when we're not taking care of ourselves. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is picking our head up from our own boat and paying attention to what's going on in the boats of the people around me. Who needs my support? Who needs my shoulder to cry on, my ear to listen to them? Where might I have some perspective that could be useful, that could be helpful to someone else? Have you ever noticed other people's stress and challenge isn't nearly as difficult to deal with as our own? Now, again, if we're dealing with it collectively, we're all in the same collective challenge, which is often the case at work or in our families or at times in our communities, right? It can be tricky, but there are times, even when I'm stressed out about some change or challenge that's happening, when I hear someone else talk about it, usually their version of it is a little different than mine. And if I can step out of myself for a moment and pay attention to them or be there for them or show up for them, not only can it be beneficial to them if I'm doing it authentically, genuinely, and responding to what it is they're actually asking for or needing, but it also can help get me out of my own way and out of my own head. What often happens when we're dealing with stress and change and challenge is we're usually fine in the moment. Right here, right now, as you're listening to this or watching this, you're okay. Even if you've got some really challenging circumstances going on in your life or at work, even if there's some really big changes or difficulties that you're facing, in this moment, you're okay. The challenge is often the fear of the future. What if this gets worse? What if this never gets better? What does this mean? Where's this going to lead? Right? We do that future tripping, understandably. And it's okay to think about the future. It's okay to plan for the future. It doesn't make us crazy or weird or, insecure. It just makes us human. But can we bring ourselves back to the present moment? Remember, I'm okay right here, right now. And in my okayness right here, right now, can I show up for other humans in a way that could potentially be supportive of them? In so doing, not only do I provide them a service and potentially a benefit, I also remind myself that I'm okay, that I have more than this requires, that I have some internal resources. If we can do those five things in the midst of whatever change or challenge or uncertainty or difficulty may be going on. So again, just to recap, the first thing is look for growth opportunities, right? Why is this happening for me, not to me? How could this make me better, stronger, more resilient? That's the first thing. The second thing is to remember this too shall pass. Whatever's going on right now, even by the way, if it's going fantastically well for you, awesome, enjoy it, appreciate it, value it. It's not going to stay the same. Life ebbs and flows, it goes up and down. This too shall pass. The third thing is to remember how resilient you are. Remember all the things you've been through, all the changes and challenges and uncertainties. If you can't think of a bunch, which most of us have a bunch we can think of, just think of everything you've been through the last 5 years since the beginning of the pandemic. Oh my gosh. It's like multiple lifetimes for most of us that what we've been through the last 5 years. But remember how resilient you are. Remember all the things that you've overcome, that you've accomplished, that you've navigated through. The fourth thing is to ask for help, ask for support. You deserve it. People want to help you. People around you are there to show up and help, even if they're going through the same thing or something similar. And then the fifth thing is to look for opportunities to where you can support people, where you can show up. And again, even if your capacity is somewhat limited, at minimum, you can give someone a smile or some empathy or some listening or a literal pat on the back or a hug or something, or just, I hear you, I'm thinking about you, send them a little text. Any little thing can make a difference. And in some cases, there are bigger things that we can do. So look, I'm feeling some of the stress and change and challenge and uncertainty of the times we find ourselves in right now, for sure. And again, whenever you may be listening to this or watching this, I'm assuming there's some kind of stress or challenge or change or uncertainty going on, because there usually is. It's the nature of life. But we have a lot to say about how we show up in the face of it, even if we can't always control the external circumstances that may be participating in some of that change or challenge or stress or uncertainty. So thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. I always appreciate it, whether this is the very first time you've listened to or watched the show, or you've been following it and me for a very long time. Make sure you hit the follow or the subscribe button in whatever app or platform you're watching or listening to this on. We always love it when you leave a rating or a review and share this episode or any of the other episodes with other people, just so more folks can benefit and learn about some of what's going on. There's links in the show notes and in the description below if you're watching this on YouTube, where you can follow me on social media or learn more about me and my work. Best place to do that is at our website, which is mike-robbins.com. Until next time, keep bringing your whole self to work and to life. And remember, We're all in this thing together.